A few things you can expect during this presentation. We are going to have a few breakouts, so that's the interactive nature. We're going to invite you in groups of 3 to 5 to have some brief conversations and put into practice some of the ideas that we're going to talk about today. So with that, we ask that you really engage fully. No email, just participate fully with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so welcome. We hope that today is something that is a little bit different than maybe you expected, and that you will find that you are not just gaining knowledge, but that you have experienced something that you can take with you. So we're talking about the need for courage and courageous leadership, specifically for highly productive team cultures. We have this quote here: "A company in which anyone is afraid to speak up, to differ, to be daring and original is closing the coffin door on itself." And so we look at this and we think, why do we need courage? What is courageous leadership? What does that mean? And we know that as we grow and as we get into the workplace, we've gone through school, we experience certain social things, and whether it's people have said something to us or we're embarrassed, we experience physiologically the pain of either not fitting in or maybe we failed, we had the wrong answer. And so we end up, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we end up developing some coping mechanisms that cause us later as adults to not act in a courageous way. And so we end up making fear-based decisions. We end up trying to control situations, especially as leaders, and in shared teams. And so I like to say our pride is actually rooted in fear. And what we would like to do is we want to shift that. We want to shift that fear-based being into a combination of connection and trust. And so we know that humans desire connection. They desire to have a bond with other people that inspires growth and helps them connect to a meaningful purpose. We also long to know as humans that we make an impact where we live, work, and play. And we can't do that without connection. So I love this quote so much. Be the reason someone feels welcomed, seen, heard, valued, loved, and supported. We all have had people in our lives who have made an impact. Maybe it was a big impact that has rippled throughout our entire life and is why we're where we are today or what we're doing. But sometimes it's just these tiny little bits of kindness or hospitality that show up, and it really makes an impact on your day that day. And so we know that those sorts of things, when we have the courage to do something that makes an impact in somebody's life, that that helps develop that sense of trust. But it takes some courage.
And we know this is very important. Gallup has done a number of studies, especially over the last decade, that when you get right down to it, is talking about how well people at work are connecting with each other. And they have a survey they call the Q12. These are 12 questions that they've scripted that they find can determine whether or not a group of people in a company or in a project how well they're engaged with the work that they're doing. And if you think about engagement, that's really another way of saying how connected they are to the work. And we have 4 of those questions right there. And you can see it really comes down to how well they're connecting to other people at the work. This idea about having a best friend at work, there are a lot of traditions, and I grew up in one where the idea that, you had friends at work was a bit foreign because, how could you hold them accountable? How could you enforce the rules if you had good friends? But it turns out it's really important. Organizations that have this high level of connection, engagement in Gallup's terms, they are more profitable. They are more productive. They've studied this over tens of thousands of people. Even in safety, the safety records of these organizations is far superior to other organizations where they don't have this level of engagement. And then, as you might expect, just the personal well-being and the feelings that people have are much stronger in organizations where you see the kind of connection. So, what we're going to talk about today are some things you can do to be purposeful or deliberate about creating that kind of connection. And it can take courage because we've been conditioned, or at least a lot of us have been conditioned, not to put ourselves out in the way that we need to if we're going to create the kind of relationships that we need to have successful projects. Just a little bit about us. We get a chance to meet a lot of people, and so we find it's helpful to just reflect on the ways people have changed in our lives, even small things that they've done. And I can recall a time speaking at a conference, and one of the people that was in a workshop that we did, Jonathan, was willing to come up, to us the next day and talk about how much he appreciated that workshop and enjoyed that time with us and sat with us. And we've actually ended up having several conversations and working with Jonathan since. So, those kinds of things, make an impact and on my day. And those are kinds of things that I appreciate, in my life.
Yeah, and so even with this picture, you see the person who is next to Tom, and her name is Renee, and you may have seen some things that she's doing. The work that she's doing is excellent. So specifically at this conference, it was the Lean Coaching Summit in Seattle, I guess a couple years ago. There is a tendency to have very few women at any project, construction, conference, and then even at Lean conferences, that tends to be the issue as well. And so I have met Renee and seen her at a couple of different conferences. And this one specifically was the first one where I met her. And she just took me in and welcomed me. And she introduced me to other people. And she really lived out the work that she is doing. And so not only was that welcoming for me, for her to introduce me to others and include me in socials and things like that, but just to see that she was actually living out what she was doing, it really made an impact. And so what we are going to do now is we are going to head into some breakout rooms and do exactly what we just did. So you're just going to talk about a time that someone made an impact on you. And we have these questions here. We'll drop them in the chat so that you'll be able to actually discuss and go back to that. So those are in the chat right now. And Dawn is going to place us in some rooms. And go ahead and feel free to discuss. Really, this is a time for us to get to know each other. Somebody you might not know.
Yeah, so if you want to even copy, so you can paste it later, but those questions are in the chat for you. And we'll spend about 5 minutes together.
Hey, Tom, so we have about like 49 people. So how many breakout rooms do you want to do?
Why don't we go ahead and do, let's go ahead and do 10 breakout rooms. I think that would be fine.
Rooms. Okay. So 5 minutes in your breakout rooms, and then
yes.
You can unmute yourselves and discuss, and then we'll come back and we'll continue the presentation. Okay, so there you go.
Hey, thank you.
Open all. Okay, go ahead. You guys are gonna. You have to join your breakout room. So I.
Yeah, you should be getting a note that asks you to join. So please do. And it's possible it's because some people are on phone and computer, they're not joining on one or the other. So Don, would you like us just to record a message for people that, specifically that are watching the recorded version?
Yeah, sure.
And then you can edit it.
We can make them this the main breakout room for that.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and make a statement and then you can edit the breakout time accordingly.
Mhm.
So if you're watching a recorded version of this webinar, we're inviting you just to hit the pause button and find one or more people that you can talk about these questions. Want you to really get the full benefit of having this kind of conversation. And then, not just for this webinar, but repeat that from time to time.
So you said 5 minutes, so I think we're gonna go for another 3 more minutes. So we're gonna wait until 9:19.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna close all the rooms and people are gonna come back.
I can't get my chat to work.
I like that message. Don't be afraid. I'm here to help you.
Thank you, Don.
Okay, Tom, I'm gonna close the breakout room and bring everyone back in.
Great, thank you. Well, it looks like everybody's filing in, and we'll restart in a moment. Let everybody have a chance to come back in.
I think it officially closes at in 30 seconds, and then when it closes, everybody automatically come back in. So, we'll leave it. Okay, Tom, I think that everybody's back by now.
Okay. Well, great. Appreciate that. I hope you had enjoyed that conversation, and we're going to put one of you on the spot and just ask if he would share just something that maybe stood out for him. So, with apologies for not giving you any heads up on this, Felipe, if you don't mind taking yourself off mute and just letting us, know what stood out for you in that brief conversation.
Let me.
Oh my gosh.
Surprise!
What am I going to say? I don't know. Yeah, so no, I was actually talking to Joe Donnarummo this morning. We were filming a podcast, and we were talking about people that mentored us earlier in our careers. And we both had a favorite superintendent story. I shared my story. Joe's the superintendent, if you don't know. He's the author of The Lean Builder. And he was telling me about some early people that mentored him. And I was telling him about a superintendent that had mentored me when I was just a snot-nosed 20-year-old kid. And I said, those, people taking that time to mentor you and show you what's what and be honest and trust you and be invested in your development is still with me today. Like the guy that helped me, his name is Jeff. And I still remember the stuff that Jeff taught me. And that was 20 years ago. It's still right there with me. So it was good to get nostalgic and go down memory lane. Thank you. You want me to share one or two? That's one.
That's one thing that stood out. I know we could turn the program over and people would love it. But no, thank you very much. So we're going to have a couple more breakouts. So we may give some other people a chance to share what they talked about as well. We're going to talk now about one of the things that we see in project teams that are successful that's important and actually is rooted in lean design and construction. Really the background of it is, and still takes quite a bit of courage, is this idea of shared leadership. And a model for that, and someone who always spoke about the importance of sharing really power, and he referred to power at the edge based on a study, an article done about basically distributing authority to people on the ground in the military. He experienced that firsthand when he was a member of a construction battalion. The person in the photograph on the lower left with the red circle, that's Greg Howell when he was a member of a construction battalion working in Thailand. And if any of you have heard Greg speak over the years, you might have heard his presentation about a commanding officer in that group that made it very important for people to be involved in the planning, to really share in the leadership of what that group was doing. And the way Greg told the story is that commanding officer would bring everybody into the planning room and really into the tent together, and had a bowl at the center of the table. And he'd ask everybody in the room to take off their rank insignia and place it in the bowl. Because for purposes of planning, for purposes of those conversations, everybody was equal. So there was no rank. and everybody had not just the right, that's one thing, but really the responsibility to share in the leadership. And when we see successful projects, we see that same kind of attitude. It doesn't matter if you're a new person out of school on a project team. When you see something, you feel willing to step up and say that, hey, I see something that might be a better approach to this, or I have an idea we need to consider. That can take some courage when you're young and coming into a project team of people that you maybe have just met. It can also take a lot of courage if you're a senior person and you've been working in the field for 30 years and you don't have the answer to a question, and you feel like as a leader you're expected to have all the answers. You may have heard that about leaders. None of us has all the answers, and that's why this idea of sharing in leadership is important. But we have to have the courage to admit where we don't know what's happening or where we've made mistakes, and draw upon the expertise of everybody and have everybody feel willing to be part of leading a project. So that's the term we use is shared leadership. So let's take it outside construction. What would you think about, if you look at this list here, I mean, which hedge fund of those that are listed do you think empowers everyone in the firm and provides complete visibility to all decisions? So we're not taking a quick poll yet, but some people might think it's one of the firms that's, pardon?
It's Bridgewater.
Yeah, it's Bridgewater. So you know the story. Yeah? So Bridgewater is a very interesting company. And you see they're the largest hedge fund out there by far. This is their current COVID headquarters right now. It's on their property in Connecticut. It's important for them to find a way to be together. And at the height, some people may argue that's even today, but certainly during the summer when this was there was just a challenge with meeting indoors. While people had the ability to work from home, they also felt it was important for those that wanted to have close proximity. This is a place where everybody does get to know what everybody's saying and thinking. And with the exception of certain personnel meetings, every meeting's recorded. And it doesn't matter if you were intended to be part of that meeting or not. And it may be about company strategy. It may be about a number of other issues that most organizations would think are sensitive. They're recorded and they're completely transparent with all the members of their company. And if you're a fresh kid out of school and you think the CEO said something that you're challenged with, you don't only have the right, you really have the responsibility to go up and say, hey, I have a concern about what you said. And that CEO has the responsibility to take what you say seriously. It's that kind of organization. So this idea of shared leadership, I mean, it works on project teams. We've seen that. It also works in terms of other parts of industry and other entities that we've seen out there. So we can find these examples. Barry Weimiller is another firm that's very much like that. And Bob Chapman wrote a book called Everybody Matters. So you can find these examples where shared leadership is extremely important. And so, we're going to, in thinking about our work, we want to also think about what's of value to us. Shared leadership is obviously something that we value very much. And when I work with the project team, seeing that is something that I value, seeing that a team is willing and able and develops those skills and capabilities of working that way. I also value the friendships that get developed. And I'll step back. As Don introduced me, I coach in the lean world, and a lot of that is in design and construction. And so I have the opportunity to work with project teams extensively. And seeing teams and engaging with teams that value being together and want to find better ways to work together, that's something that's important to me and that I value heavily.
Yeah, and Tom mentioned earlier someone named Jonathan who made an impact on his day, and that has continued to be something that has impacted both of us as Tom and I have been working together. So something that I greatly value about the work that we do is that it is not just for one industry, because it is human-centered and it is about the way we work, the way that we work together, and developing a meaningful purpose for the work in a shared team environment with shared leadership. We get to make an impact across the board in so many ways. And this is actually one of the departments at Massachusetts General Hospital that we've been working with over the last year and a half. And we are helping them. This is a seminar that at this moment they're in a discussion with each other, getting to know each other a little bit more outside of their professional roles and day in, day out, what they have to do together. And seeing what happens in moments like this, really, I really take great pleasure and joy in that, and it makes the work more meaningful for me. And so we're going to do another breakout, and we would like you to share something that you value about the work that you do, or something that you value on your current project. Generate ideas for steps to increase shared leadership, like Tom mentioned with the Bridgewater. They're recording all of their meetings. They're allowing for everyone to have input. And so where do you see these opportunities? Who can you speak to about this? And what actions can you take, and how soon will you do that? So Doan, if you wouldn't mind going ahead and breaking us out again.
Yeah, and I put those questions in the chat box if you want to copy, and so you can bring them with you. We encourage you to do that.
Okay, I'm opening the rooms again. So
Thank
the
you.
same rooms as before, everybody. So just join your rooms. If you're not in a room, I will assign you to a room. Assign to. And are we giving them 5 minutes?
Yeah, that's-
Actually, 10, well, let's say 8 to make sure we stay on track. It's a little bit longer discussion.
So we're gonna continue at 9:40. So
Right.
7 minutes from now.
I'm going to pop into this breakout room.
Are you going to ask somebody to join us then?
I can.
Or share? I mean, share.
Yeah.
Why don't
Okay.
you do that while you're in there? Yeah. Thank you. And when you're ready, Doan, I could make a record. I can record a message for people watching the recording. So if you're watching a recording of this webinar, we invite you just to, again, hit the pause button and find someone and have a conversation and discuss these questions. Share something you value, and then think about how you could create more shared leadership on your project or in your work.
Hey Tom, I'm closing the breakout room, so in about 60 seconds, everyone's going to go back in.
Great, thank you. So we're welcoming people back, and a few more moments and we'll get everybody back here.
Everybody's back, Tom.
Great. So we're back. Everybody's back.
Is there anyone who would like to share something that stood out to you, or a great idea somebody had?
If I may ask, what kind of ideas?
So
In terms of
who you would speak to first, or where you would see opportunities for taking steps toward more of a shared leadership where everyone has input or knows that they can contribute, what actions you would take? Is there anything that
I would see all the opportunities, and all the opportunities are hidden within the 8 wastes that are categorized in Lean, right? So when we focus on them, we're actually seeking opportunities like unutilized talent. You're seeking extra brains, more creativity. When you're seeking to eliminate the process waste, you're actually seeking the opportunity of creating a better system, a more efficient and effective one, and so on.
Great.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that, and hope you everybody enjoyed the conversation that they had. We in talking about courage, we're going to talk now about identity and the role identity plays, and we'll talk also about purpose on project teams. So if you think about why we're talking about courage being so important, for most of us, beginning in childhood, we learn how to cope with challenges that we have, right? And in some cases, they can be fairly serious. But when you're a child, even a modest comment about your lack of athletic ability or your inability to solve a math problem can actually have an impact. And we develop these strategies for coping with, for all of us as children, what are challenges. And sometimes those could be quite traumatic. And what our coping does is really hide for us some of the valuable things that we can bring to others that we work with. And we learn to, in a sense, put that aside, that valuable part of us, because at some other point in our life, it seemed to hurt us or it was criticized. And so it takes courage to explore and discover and bring back what that part we discarded was. And a lot of work that we've done with teams is to help people re-engage with why they're valuable. So why I'm valuable to a team: if I'm a cost estimator, well, of course, my cost estimating is valuable to that team. But there may be something about me personally in terms of my ability to relate to others that I bring that's just as important to understand. And if I've lost touch with that, then I'm not contributing.
Right. So it is extremely important for us to get to a place where we can reintegrate who we are and how we fit in a shared identity. So not only do we need to know who we are so that we can show up strongly and courageously in developing that foundation of trust and connection, we are also, and showing up as who we are also helping with that term that has come about with all of this, psychological safety, right? We all are longing for that environment where we can feel safe to contribute, to speak up, to make bold decisions. And so it's important that we go through a discovery process. And this is not a one and done thing. This has nothing to do with our role or our title. It is actually about how we show up. It's sort of like what happens from the gut. Tom, if you could go to the next slide, please. So we see things like, here's some examples of discovering some core identity or who we are, how we show up in our work. And so outgoing, creative, adaptable, overcomer, a leader, a visionary, creative, problem solver. All of those things are how these individuals show up in a time of need. And so based on their role or their title, one of these attributes might show up stronger in the moment, right? So it's not that these all show up at the same time. It's not that our title and our role don't influence how we show up, but it's not about that. So until we know who we are at a core level and how we do show up, it's going to be more difficult for us to see how we fit in a shared team identity, and specifically around a meaningful purpose. And so these are just some pictures of where we did have a team come together and form that shared identity, bringing special attributes of who they are, the things they cannot live without, into this shared identity.
Yeah, a lot of this knowledge we have about ourselves is, we could say below the surface or at an unconscious level. So we use a lot of metaphorical thinking to help draw that out and help people really explore who they are individually, and then also who they can be together then. And this idea of a shared identity is it sounds like a construct in terms of taking the best of each of us and how do we define what that is in a group. There's also, though, quite a bit of research in neurology and psychiatry that supports the idea that the shared identity is more than a metaphor. It's a real thing when people work together. And we need to understand and deliberately construct this shared identity. So it's something that teams that can pause and really think about what it is they bring to the table individually and how they want to join that together. They form a stronger bond and a stronger understanding of what they want to accomplish together.
Yeah, they get to know each other at a deeper level, and it really helps form that foundation of trust. There's something magical that happens there in that moment, because walls are being torn down, where normally, we are all about the task and getting things done and checking the boxes. And so in a situation like that, where a team is coming together, learning more about who they are as a whole, as a team, and not just a bunch of individuals doing work, it really contributes to higher productivity, higher morale, it makes a big impact on the work.
So this idea of connecting identity to purpose or what your impact is going to be is extremely important. So in terms of thinking about this, we're going to invite you to do a little experiment on yourself. But before that, we just want to talk about some interesting work. There's been a few studies related to this, but this idea of understanding who we are, we feel is related to these studies around priming people for just thinking about superhero qualities. It's an interesting study that has been done a few times. But in this one study, a group of volunteers were asked to just think about superhero qualities, just list features of being a superhero. A control group was just asked, in this case, they were asked, think about features or qualities of a dormitory room. But then they tested real life situations, asking people to volunteer or commit to an action and then actually follow through with the volunteering. They found that the group that was primed with superhero thoughts were more than twice as likely to volunteer and commit time to a cause when they were asked to do so. And that priming effect appeared to last for months afterwards as well when they retested volunteers. It's a fascinating study. And what we have found in working with teams is it's also a way to help people think about who they are and how they show up. So we're going to ask you to think about who you are by considering some superhero qualities. If you had a piece of paper and a pen, or you want to just write down things that come to your mind, that might be helpful. But I'm sure that for a lot of people, there are some ideas that come to top of mind. So we're going to break out one more time, and we'd like you to talk together about what qualities or strengths stand out for you. So not necessarily a superpower. I mean, it's great to go flying, but there are other qualities about these people that are featured, and they may not necessarily even have a superpower. But there are heroes out there in real life that don't have superpowers, but they certainly have qualities that may stand out for you. And then also think about times that you've helped others and how you showed up when people needed your help. I'm going to go ahead and pop those. Sorry, I'm going to pop those questions into the chat box as well.
How long do you want to make the breakout discussion this time?
Like 5 minutes.
5 minutes would be fine. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you find when you get to your breakout room that there is not any discussion going on, please come back to the main room and we will discuss there.
Okay. Thank you.
We don't want anyone just sitting.
Yes. And I'm going to disappear into one of these for a moment.
Okay, that'd be good. Hello.
My breakout room, we weren't able to discuss, so I came back.
Okay, great. How are you?
Doing good.
Good. So do you have any superhero qualities?
Superhero dollars, I guess. Collaborative, right? Always working together. Avenger style.
Yeah. Gosh, when I think of some, I think of just a passion for people, for doing what is right, no matter who it is or what the situation. So where have you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say willing to put themselves on the line is another one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like a bold sacrifice, right?
To constantly put yourself out there first.
Yeah. Right. So what have people said about you? Like how you show up for others? Because I know sometimes without going deep into like, if you've never done any work on knowing who you are really or how you show up, then we kind of have to go back to like, what have other people said about how I show up? Family, team.
Work-wise, people always say that I'm easy to talk to. So there isn't a sense of, so if there is an issue, they don't have a problem kind of coming to me and discussing things with me. I'm kind of open in that way. So, and it's something that I actively try to work at. I think it's because in the past, working with others, if you don't feel like the person who you're working with or whoever the leader is someone you can kind of go to and get information from, if they just kind of feel very unavailable, changes the dynamics of the group that you're on. And so I try to make a point and always trying to be available and open for the people that I'm working with.
Yeah, I like that. Available, open. It sounds like you're hospitable. You show hospitality or warmth.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's like the most consistent thing, I think.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Hey guys.
Hey.
So there was only 2 people in breakout room 10, and the guy on there with me was driving, so it was really hard to hear him.
And then I ditched you because I stayed in here in case anybody came back.
And the other 2 people that were in breakout room 10 at the beginning, they did not show up, so I'm not sure if they're still on.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, do you want to share in here?
Sure.
Okay.
What are we sharing? Where are we? Did we do any of this?
We're on any superhero quality attribute that is not necessarily a superpower that you admire or that stands out to you.
I don't know. Honesty, sincerity, respect. Let's see, what else? Tolerance.
What was that?
Tolerance.
Tolerance.
Sorry, I have to wear a mask. I'm at the office, so.
And then the second question is, how do you show up? So what qualities are there for you when you are showing up for others, or maybe it's...
Oh, I try my best not to show up for others.
What have other people said about you?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think that all of the above. I'd like to think that I show up for others. I like to think I show people respect. And, well, when I said tolerance, I mean, you know how they always say there's no stupid questions. I've seen people in meetings where you can see them getting aggravated by people asking questions. And I hope I don't do that. That kind of way. Because I think everybody has something to contribute. So it's important to listen to everybody. And I hope that I get listened to by people who look at me that way too, Sometimes I'll be in a meeting, and Felipe will know this. I'll ask the dumb question even though I know the answer, because I feel like that there's people in the room who don't know the answer but are afraid to ask. Morning, Felipe.
So, that's completely true. I've been witness to many a dumb question asked by Dave.
So if that was an attribute that we could name, what would that be? Ooh. That you are willing to put yourself on the line for others just in case, or for a learning moment? I wonder what that, if we could
I
give
don't know.
it
What would that be?
a name.
Come on, Dave. I'm sure there's a word for it in Gaelic. Come on.
That's definitely, you're willing to, well, I mean, it sounds like you believe in others, but
And
That-
this is where I think
very
we sometimes we struggle, because sometimes there really isn't the exact word for what we bring to a group. But it's really helpful to get in touch with that, because then you can be more deliberate, and you sounds like you already are, Dave. But that's, that's not your professional quality. That's your sort of inner human quality at making sure people are at ease in opening up and not feeling fearful about participating, but feeling encouraged to do that. So, I'm not sure what the word is, and that's less important than the people you work with understand that they can count on you, and that's an important role, and that helps the project team be more effective.
Yeah. And I mean, when you do know that and you have the courage to model that, it really does make an impact on others, and it can encourage them to do the same.
So I see people are joining us. Is everybody back, Dawn?
Yes, everyone's back right now.
Okay. So, so Dave, not everybody was here, but if you don't mind, we'll let you share that again about what you found, what shows up when people need your help. We're not hearing you, Dave.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sorry. The last bit we talked about was that one of the things I'm not afraid to do in a group is if I'm sitting there and I feel like there are questions that haven't been asked, but people are afraid to ask them because they think they might be considered stupid questions, I tend to ask that question even though I know the answer.
Yeah. And so what we're saying is that those kind of human qualities are the kinds of things that are important to understand. We've done work where people have really, thinking about, discovered that what they do is they help ease tensions. They can relax a tense situation by injecting humor. We found other people their planning ability, even though that's not their title, their ability to organize how people will come together and host a conversation about how work will come together is something that they bring. So there are a number of these qualities that aren't necessarily our job, our profession, and it really helps to not only explore within you what they are, but have an open conversation with the other people in your team.
Yeah, I like what Felipe chimed in for his teammate, and he offered the word vulnerability as a leader to let others see him as not knowing the perfect answer. And he said that's one of his many reasons he's lucky to have Dave as his friend. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that contribution.
Yeah. And contributing is what a lot of this is all about. And we are often afraid to, if not right out contribute, it's sometimes we're afraid to admit that we are. There's an interesting book by, and Lieberman is his last name, but he recounts a story where a grad student did quite a bit of volunteer work for the department. And, she was thanked for it, and she felt she had to say, well, I'm going to, get the advantage of this, and it's going to help me in my future work. And the reality was it really wasn't, he said, but we are programmed to even respond that, what's in it for me? And we're afraid to even admit that we're willing just to contribute something. But humans naturally do desire to contribute. And we've been conditioned to think that there's something odd about wanting to contribute to a team. So one of the things that we were encouraging you as you work with your projects or in your company is, understand that it's fine to want to contribute, and actually that's what makes for successful projects. Understand though too, if there's reluctance to appear that way, it's because the conditioning is holding us back, and this is where courage is really required.
Yes.
We have time for questions and answers, but we really want to first just encourage that with wherever you are in your project team, this is about you, and you can be the spark, and you can have the courage, and you could be 2 months out of school, and you could still really be the catalyst for this idea of creating a shared leadership on your team. It may not be instant. It may take a lot of work. But as long as you have the courage and the commitment, you can do it. And so you can be that spark.
Yeah. And this really, it starts with just one person, right? We saw that beautifully displayed with between Dave and Felipe, and within both of them sharing their contributions and the way that they have made an impact on each other. That made an impact on me, and just that little bit. So if we can focus not on the big giant, there's no way that we're going to get our whole team to have shared leadership. That's not where you start. It starts with the way that you interact and the way that you choose to show up. Yeah. So we have some steps that you can take.
Yeah. So, and these aren't necessarily sequential, but this is where would like you and encourage you to be thinking about and taking these steps. And I believe you'll all be able to get a download of this, so it'll be included in the slide deck.